Welcome back to another chapter of Shinnok's Uprising. Last time, the combatants actually got ready for for Shinnok's war on the heavens in Edenia, as Raiden came to the aid of his hapless brother Fusion, who was incapacitated by the wars in the heavens, and Shinnok returning from the Netherrealm having his revenge, and being ambushed by the Onis. The combatants came to his aid, and Raiden warned them of Shinnok's return from the Netherrealm after several thousands of years. So, meanwhile, Edenia was actually being ransacked by Shinnok's return, as well as his generals with Quan Chi and all of that, while Katana was breaking peace with the Shokan and the Centaurs, as Goro stepped in. So, the combatants reunited with Johnny Cage, who was resurrected by Raiden at the Jinsei Chamber, along with some other chick, he said. And so they made it to Edenia, and Quan Chi challenged them to a tournament of his own. And their goal is to go to the Edenian Palace. So let's begin. Alright, continuation 3, rallying up the Raptors. You'll see why. If anyone notices I'm missing something about Kai, please let me know. I wasn't thrilled over MK4 nor the latter installments, and Kai was one of its debuts. All I see is nothing more than one of Liu Kang's monk trainees he found. Aside on journeying from Eastern Asia for enlightenment, I don't really find him to be all that special. So let me know what you think. And especially this goes out to MK Confessions. Before Liu Kang ordered his troops to march toward Kung Lao and Aiko just stood still as statues, or more like frozen by Sub-Zero's cryokinesis. He turned and faced the two comrades. What's wrong? That face we saw. Something seems eerily familiar. Aiko and he appeared in our nightmares, in our visions of our dystopian future. I think I know who he is, Kung Lao. He's the demon sorcerer Quan Chi. I know him from anywhere. He was the same enemy that possessed the gem of Tetsuri and infected your souls. Remember? I can hardly recall what happened then. If you saw Defenders of the Realm, you will know the true debut of Quan Chi. Not mythology, Sub-Zero. It was released a year before. Get it right. She struggled to remember that aforementioned incident a few years ago. Liu Kang and Sub-Zero felt the same way. What? Who are you talking about? Quan Chi! I thought I recognized that name. That triggered that same memory to Aiko. He was the demon sorcerer from the Netherrealm. Fu Xin Raiden's brother warned us about him. And even I can remember that incident Nightwolf mentioned. He and I were the only ones who weren't affected by the evil gem. The brutal fights the combatants had against each other flashed into her mind while Nightwolf was struggling with Quan's pet snake, trying to talk some sense into them. Fight the darkness! Remember? Sub-Zero broke her reverie. Quan Chi! I thought his name sounded familiar. I can hardly recall that gem quarrel, but I think my brother Bihan was once involved with him. He and Scorpion were hired by him, despite having rival clans. He wanted the best ninja assassins to help him receive a sacred magical amulet. Alas, my brother died trying by the likes of that vengeful wraith obsessed with malice. Tried to resist memories for the death of his sibling during the first tournament. I will avenge my brother, someday. But I can't help but feel the sorcerer has something to do with it. You'll see. Guess we all have an agenda with that creepy-looking scoundrel. Okay, so we all are somehow connected with this punk. Yes, and there's no telling what he has in store. Katana and the Edenians are in there, and we must save them. His words restored their determination and they marched down the hill. But the arrogant celebrity wasn't quite buying it. Is he still love-struck over her? Heh, you have no idea. Maybe we can work some things out between us since I'm back to my suede self. Johnny? We have a duty to uphold here. Combat alert, something's coming through, Nightwolf pointed out. Time to see what you can do, Kai. Of course, master, he replied with a bow. He was beside him, his sensei fought off several shadows emerging from the ground. The Onis came out too, though they were easier to deal with, even for Kung Lao. His moves seemed much swifter and stronger than a couple years prior. Signature tornado kick, it should be, was twice as fast and deadlier as well. I guess all that training with Fujin is finally paying off. At times, Aiko used her cardiokinesis, drained the enemy's health, and it carried over to the combatants who were weak. It's like a magnetic pull of sorts as she sensed who was fatigued or hurt. Whenever a demon shall get close to her, she'd whack them with her club. Johnny volunteered to cover his so-called mate with his own martial arts, while Sonya grew a bit jealous he was doing all the sweeping. Though she was prepared if any monstrosity should invade her space, especially the shadows, which took her by surprise. Because she never fought in Shaolin monks. Actually, those sneaky subterranean creatures were the most difficult to deal with since they'd always hide beneath the ground and were too quick on emerging. Sub-Zero's ice blasts were a lifesaver once he made his mark, allowing the other fighters, mostly Nightwolf, to vanquish them. Eventually, as the Onis were wiped out, more of the jet-black demons came forth. This made the fight more tedious. We have to attack them while they're vulnerable. They need to be solid. The Ice Ninja did just that as he froze each one. Aiko was having the most difficult with them. She kept on missing her targets, and they had no problem doing her with their sights. Kung Lao often came to her defense, just as Johnny did the same to Sonya, remained closest to her, even while she was distracted upon healing herself. Taking in the shaman's words, the other warriors had little to no effort with the undead legion, even while being exposed to Sub-Zero's ice blasts. Whew, those fanatics certainly were a good warm-up. Well done fighting them, Kai. Not bad for a novice. His partner seemed to rely on brute than anything, so he was more like a ravaging tank. The guys were a little sore that they pressed on till they finally descended from the steep opaque hill. With a firmer footing, their moves became direct as they had a slightly easier time with the Onis and Shadows. They became more vicious as they broke out their lethal moves. Yeah, you get the deal. Kung Lao used his guillotine, Johnny Cage shadow kicks, Kai's brute strength, Sonya's energy rings, Aiko's club, Nightwolf's soul weapons, and Sub-Zero's slides. Thanks to Aiko's abilities to absorb energy from enemies, not only it became immobilized, thus vulnerable to onslaughts, but she also functioned as a medic. "Is that all you got, sorcerer?" It was Cage. Sonya retorted his ego, which never changed since before his resurrection, and perhaps that was why he was at the mercy of Motaro. Figures. Kai couldn't help but just as confident, but Lou warned it'd be too easy. Still, we must keep moving. Ah! Some of the minions he and Lou recognized, the demon archers and wards, emerged from the shadows, and the fight was now tougher than ever. Here come the commandeers. Combat time! I kept the line in. The combatants relied on close combat, even using their provided shields to block their lethal projectiles. Sub-Zero conjured. Nightwolf encased it with the chest, blah blah blah. There's a club, there's Lao. The other warriors simply blocked, though with the constant impacts their body became weaker. It wasn't long before the demon warmongers stepped into the plate. Ugh. I wish we had reinforcements right about now. They're rattling the warriors since every one of the Athenian guards had either been imprisoned or killed. Either way, no one was coming to their aid while the perimeters of the palace remained deserted. Obviously, the demon warmongers were definitely the army's biggest threat. Next to the demon generals, as Lou and Lao recalled back in their journey through Outworld. Specifically, the Foundry. They could have sworn that the military continued to grow rapidly with other enemies such as the Oni, Shadows, and Archers. The demon army was starting to overwhelm the heroes. Liu Kang declared they needed to split up and infiltrate the palace on all sides, instead of directly. Kung Lao and Aiko drove some of the demonic forces away and were chased into the living forest to the west. Sonya and Johnny wound up with each other as they headed east, as did Liu Kang with Kai to the northeast, and Nightwolf with Sub-Zero northwest. Oh man, the party is separated! With their formation, both Lao and Aiko escaped to the cooler and moist jungles. The exotic agriculture greeted the duo as the demons continued to chase after them. At times, Lao looked back and attacked the enemies incoming from the rear, and the vegetation gave them slight cover. The army continued to form, and the monk hollered, "Aiko! Hide in that cave!" She blushed, and some of the demons followed, while Kung Lao focused his energy, wound up, and rapidly spun like a vortex. Numerous militians were caught in the funnel, like helpless prey sticking into a spider web. Each one had an unfortunate death, whether it be getting impaled, or being caught and eaten in the mutated tree's maws, or having their bodies splattered. The other assailants that were after Aiko decided to retreat into the shadows. She was impressed of all the strenuous training thanks to Fujin. She congratulated him when the F-Zero tornado dissipated. "Great job, Kung Lao! I guess all that training with Fujin has finally paid off." Yeah, I guess so. We should chance some rest at that cave. Might as well before those evil trees shall hinder us. Couldn't have agreed more. The Chinese warrior spotted a silhouette covering over the walls. He braced himself until the figure revealed herself. Kitana! Man, are we glad to see you! She was taken aback by the sudden hug, but Lao simply bowed. Ditto, Aiko. I spotted that temporary tornado, despite the clear sky. Then I figured it was you, Kung Lao. I was hoping to find Liu Kang as I noticed the palace was invaded by the Army of Darkness. but I guess you two will suffice. Lao explained of their predicament and the princess wasn't surprised. With just you mortals and no army, we can never survive, especially against Quan Chi and Shinnok. She smacked her fists, recalling the captors of her people, including her mom and royal guard. There are those names again! Katana was impressed they knew them. As they stationed themselves in the nearby cave in a small firelit, they discussed their unfortunate experiences, even those while training with Fujin at the Wind World. Katana mentioned it was best to attack without being detected, never shaming them of their sudden separation. She stated she struck a peace treaty between the Shokan and Centaurs when she noticed the explosion, although the Netherrealm forces were too much. She was divided from the gathering two beastly tribes. She hoped that Goro would rally up the cavalry. Goro! He's still alive? This is not the time for revenge, Kung Lao. He's been in hiding from Shao Kahn as well as healing his wounds. We have a greater threat to worry about for now. He calmed himself. She then mentioned that while on the subject, he was once involved with Quan Chi as well, his ancestor. The topic really got the monk's attention as he shifted closer to the bonfire. As you can see, this is the events of Mortal Kombat Conquest, even though I haven't seen it yet. Hopefully I will make some time. You can pause here if you want. I don't want to read all that. Basically, it's what he did in Conquest mode. Or, not Conquest mode, Mortal Kombat Conquest. But I had to do a little research on the matter. It was certainly no surprise for Katana, nor Lao or Aiko. And this treacherous sorcerer, everybody seems connected with him. Well, there's Micah, but I've yet to know more about her because I haven't seen Conquest yet. Later on, after Lao lost his life at the hands of Goro, Quan Chi was sealed in the cobalt mines of Shao Kahn by Shao Kahn's ravaging shadow priests. Legend had it that those native minerals nullified his powers. He was slain and sealed back into the underworld. That was just a theory. Until Sub-Zero's brother was employed by him and started that intense, never-ending feud with Scorpion. Your ancestor was just lucky he had comrades to back him up, and so should we. We shall rally up the raptors native to the living forest in Cetera. We will need to have the other tribes join our flight too, including the scattered Shokan. None of us can possibly be champion alone. The wise words of Raiden, never forget. Hours later, the trio woke up from their slumber. Aiko and Kung Lao followed Katana through the living forest. They knew she'd be an essential guide to them, since she had plenty of experience as part of Edenian royalty. She even helped them traverse through the quicksand swamps, fending off the soul-infested trees, more imps and shadows, and venomous snakes. They arrived at what almost seemed to be a marsh, only there was no water, but the slippery, spongy silt still remained. Numerous live trees surrounded the spot, and each one constantly groaned as soon as they saw the trio, which made Aiko unnerved. Due to her handy stilettos, Katana had little to no issues traversing through it, contrary to the duo's more flatter footwear. The gang kept following her, trying to never mind the creepy tree's continual moans. A lone ninja blended into the thick canopy as he watched the three unsuspecting wanderers. This place leads to the Cetera ruins. We should be close to the lost raptor's stronghold. They continued onward until the same olive-colored assassin ambushed them from above, immediately turned and spat acid onto Katana's face. Aiko, stay with Katana! I'll handle this sneaky reptilian. The enemy immediately faced the heroic monk. And this is like the best quote ever.
I have no quarrel with you.
I will tear your flesh.
I now have a quarrel with you.
Best quote ever from Mortal Kombat 10. Thanks to his previous encounter with the other two Saurians, Lao memorized his past strategies, kept them distant to avoid his corrosive spits. Basically, it's the same style with Kombat, really. But at first he was caught off guard by his opponent's own spear similar to scorpions, which dragged Lao over the sill effortlessly. However, he was able to break free as a free hand sliced the rope apart by his deadly hat. The Satyran vanished, but Lao knew he wasn't done. A moment's silence, he used a spinning kick and got his assailant unawares and into the air. The Saurian was more nimbler than what Lao anticipated, and resilient. Monk's main disadvantage was indeed the mushy silt. One time he was blinded. Lao played to keep away as he teleported. Threw in his hat as Saurian wasn't looking. He even used his teleport kicks. Satyra was more vicious with his invincibility. That was until Aiko conjured her cardiokinesis, squeezing his heart. With another direct hit, the Saurian was incapacitated. Lao towered over the poor reptilian as he begged for mercy that he wasn't falling to his twisted trick. He raised his hat and prepared to slice him into ribbons. No! Katana came to her with her arms spread out. We need to ally ourselves with the raptors. Killing one would send a terrible example. He must be one of his generals. Do you pay your allegiance to Shinnok? He replied with contempt. I serve no one. My will only belongs to me and to my dwindling clan. Then why did you attack us? We are very territorial. We get very many enemies here, fleshling. We have a right to preserve our race. Aren't all Saurians aggressive? They may seem to have violent tendencies, cold-blooded as reptiles, but it's only to defend themselves against their intruders. Our progress in restoring Edenia to its former glory has pacified some Saurians, but they're few and far in between. They challenged us in battle at times, but we usually win over them, and so we've proven ourselves by their code. So they go by trials of combat. Great! Identify yourself, Saurian! The rebel went by the name of Sizoth after their match, which to Lao didn't seem so honorable, offered to escort them through the deadly forest to their ancient ruins. Needless to say, the Saurian guards weren't thrilled to see those different from their race. The general assured they're not here to fight, but rather rally them up for the war against Shinnok. Even to them, the name sounded familiar and alarming. The kingdom reeked of mildew and overgrown with vines. There weren't many inhabitants, the heroes noticed. There were lesser mutated trees than usual, but enemies still ran amok. Katana stated they lost many raptors while restoring the swamps. Some decided to join the cause since they remembered the legends surrounding the first conflict of Shinnok centuries ago. This is a key factor here. Their home was corrupted by Khan and Shang with the souls possessing the trees. The raptors became just as aggressive as their elitist reptile. Swamps were once part of Edenia, and the benevolent rulers had tumultuous, harsh times restoring it. Aiko and Lao believed that all Saurians were as bloodthirsty as reptile. Katana said it wasn't the only case. She then recalled the incident of Tetsuri, which triggered bad memories of the gem involving her first encounter with Quan Chi. Tetsuri was their first ruler in the new realm, but was very tyrannical, thus leaving behind its crystallized heart as a valuable though corruptive artifact. Katana recalled herself and her team being manipulated by it as Quan Chi's magic erupted its evil. The three combatants found a sanctuary to rest in the Satyra swamps. The Shaolin monk queried to his companion. Aiko, you said you knew about this gem of Tetsuri, but you and Nightwolf weren't affected by it. He said he destroyed the crystallized heart because he wasn't affected by its infectious influence. Were you resistant to it? No. I was actually distracted by something else. And that is? You remember when I mentioned that there were other realms involved in the rips of the dimensional fabric before Khan regained his lost strength? Yes? Well, one in particular was the one I missed so much. They came from a different realm, but I forgot what it was. 9 creatures, mutated dragon turtles known as Koopas, had entered Earthrealm and decided to help out. Bowser was their king, but he appeared weak in defending his turf. It wasn't long when he and his 8 Koopalings had a change of heart. They realized Khan was a stronger threat than them. One day, when I went with the combatants to the Caribbean rainforest chasing after a portal, the Koopalings kinda got in trouble, and one got caught in a thorn bush. I helped them get one of their kin out, while at the same time the combatants met a refugee offering a gift to them, which in turn sorta enchanted them, and the boy left their souls being darkened by hatred. And that was the treasure of Zatera, the gem of Tetsuri. Raiden said this was a myth, never believing to be true. I guess that Zatera was neglected for so long. Nightwolf said he destroyed it and Quan Chi just got away. So that was how you two met him. Exactly. Aside from the nightmare, of course. Lao took a breather trying to process all that information. I think this place is connected to my ancestor too. The Zateras, they seem to be just as vicious as Reptile. I don't think there's any chance on pacifying them. He doubted Katana's words on doing so with the Shokan and Centaurs. He and Aiko were still surprised as Sizoth stated that they were the early inhabitants of Earthrealm, until his kind managed to escape to another realm, Satera, which neighbored Edenia, but was neglected and forgotten. Rumor had it that Raiden aided their escape as he and Fusion, along with the gods, combated Shinnok for the first time, which resulted in the extinction of their species and enveloped the world in darkness for centuries. So, let me get this straight. The Zaterans were originally from Earthrealm, and they were its earliest inhabitants, which means they'd been around since the dinosaurs existed, yet they had been moved to another realm as Raiden and Shinnok were fighting each other, which caused their cataclysmic extinction millions of years ago? God, do I feel sorry for you guys. No wonder you're always on high alert, defending your kind and all. If only our realm hasn't been abandoned for so long. We'll make it up to you when all this is over, but your tribe is doomed if you should venture in alone. We must recruit the Edenians, Shokan, and Centaurs, and maybe the Tarkans if we're lucky. The mentioning of the carnivorous outcasts made Lao and Aiko grimace. If possible. If the other peoples are willing to unite with us against Shinnok, then maybe there can be an exception. Our lives depend on it, and I certainly don't want our land and civilization be enslaved again. Ugh. If the other peoples are willing to unite with us against Shinnok, then maybe there can be an exception. Our lives depend on it, and I certainly don't want our land and civilization be enslaved again. It shall be done, Sizoth. Word got out and the other Zaterans decided to honor their breed, and perhaps find a way to repopulate their species without the horrific results of necromancy. They were once humanoids much like the Edenians, after all. While the pacifier slumbered, Sizoth marched out to one of the balconies overridden with overgrowth and sneered. Yes, everything is according to plan. Soon the Zaterans will reclaim what is ours, and take revenge on the other realms. We shall fulfill the will of Shinnok. I'm not sure if this is correct or not, but am I the only one who thinks that Shinnok has been inspired by Jafar and Aladdin? I mean, seriously. His ominous colorful robes, the matching helmet, the tall menacing staff. The fact he's a sorcerer wielding the black arts? No one else has or would make that connection. Like they ignored Ganon and Shao Kahn being inspired by each other. I'm going to lose it! As you noticed, there were some elements from Defenders of the Realm and Conquest connecting with Shinnok and Quan Chi. Katana and the Saurians referenced those events because just like Zatara, they'd been long ignored. Everything's connected with these two foes, and these two pieces of media should be explored more often and not be as left as non-canon. Seriously, with story elements like these should be important to the overall plot. Those S9 creators always abandon so many elements that have so much potential. The fans should be listened to and take charge of all the games, movies, shows, etc. Fuck those ignorant corporate bastards. This is what MK4 should be, a war that required the unification of all the peoples in Edenia before jumping from combatant to combatant. This is the one game that's been starving for a remake aside from Shaolin Monks. But Ed Boon and his pathetic developers, even the higher-ups in Warner Brothers, don't care! I threw in the Koopas cause a long time ago when I was around 9-ish, my mind was going wild when I was watching Defenders of the Realm. I kind of figured all those random ideas were just those from various realms that assisted the heroes temporarily, before they'd been sealed away permanently after Khan's failed insurrection, aka the final episode before being canned. Thus Aiko's forced resignation and the rips in the dimensional fabric can cause all those anomalies. The Koopas I felt were the ones that held up well, especially involving the evil Gemma Tetsuri. More can be explained in my retrospective. It's so-so now. Little digging, it can be found. I was also shocked that Raiden and Shinnok's first conflict triggered the extinction and the Saurians. I feel sorry for them, and Aiko's quote was my exact impression on that. I wish they'd apply more real-life events in the MK universe, and I just love Kung Lao's challenge over Reptile in MKX. My all-time favorite since Underdog Gaming mentioned it in his vid, the greatest downfall in Mortal Kombat history. At first I was going to pick the battle theme, and there are the songs for that. So Kung Lao, Aiko, and Katana recruited the Saurians. But what is Sizot's ulterior motives? Well, find out later. Until then, this is the Ecron Rider signing out. Ciao.